Ladies and gentlemen, we are officially back. Colts season. Colts football is here, man. I know it's been a while, but we are officially back. This is the first reaction in a long time to a Colts football game. It's been so long, but we finally returned. But I couldn't come alone. I had to come with my guy from the Blue Stables, very own, a writer as well, my dog Jay. You might know as Lucas. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
Hey man, I could do doing better with a W, but it is what it is at the end of the day. But it is all good. We got a lot to discuss right now at this brief moment, talking about the Colts versus the Bills preseason week 1 of the new season for the NFL. Anthony Richardson finally stepped onto the field in a Colts jersey, and he turned a few heads and he had a few question marks, but it is what it is at the end of the day. But I loved every second of it. But we're going to go ahead and hop into the discussion right now. You guys let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Also, like, comment, and subscribe. Also, follow both of us on all social media platforms. We are live on Twitter right now and on YouTube, so we appreciate all your support. Let's go ahead and deep dive into this game. I'm going to start off with the man of the hour, Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, he came into the game, looked a little off, I would say. I mean, but it didn't take him long to get into his natural self and show off his true ability. I think Anthony Richardson, the interception, I think played a little bit on the receiver more than him. It is, it does come to a mental thing when it comes to the quarterback position, and we also have to realize that Anthony Richardson, this is like his 14th game playing football in general, NFL and college wise combined. So he's gonna have to learn a lot, especially at the QB position, especially in the NFL. We know how talented he is with his God given ability to run, be mobile, and to actually play football under pressure. We know how good he is when it comes to that situation. But everything is not all on Anthony Richardson. Let me get your thoughts on how he played this game and your thoughts on the interception as well.
Overall, it was an up and down performance for Anthony Richardson. I mean, no one's going to say, oh, he blew everyone away. There were some balls that he threw that were a little too high when he was missing them. And because of that, it made it a little bit harder for some of his receivers to get it. But he also, with that miscommunication, definitely seemed like it was more on his receiver, Isaiah McKenzie, rather than on him. Apparently, McKenzie must have run the wrong route because if we were looking at the sideline, Reggie was not happy with Isaiah. And Isaiah did have an interview afterwards, and he took accountability for that, which is really nice to see. The guy get on the same page. Sometimes these guys aren't practicing with each other as much, and there can be these miscommunications. So, a bunch of new pieces, anyways. So, it's tough to see, but hey, that's just life with a young quarterback and a lot of moving pieces overall. So, with Richardson specifically, he was doing pretty well. Like he had some great deep balls, like one to Alec Pierce right in the end zone, right there. But it was a little bit of a slightly tougher catch for Pierce just naturally because he was sliding. It was like a bit low by the time he got to it, but also it was like the only place where he could have gotten it because there's a defender also kind of nearby. So it wasn't like the easiest drop, but it was still a drop nonetheless. That would have been a amazing highlight touchdown for all of us to scream about for preseason football. But ultimately, he looked really nice and he had some really good runs as well. One of them was negated by a penalty by Pharaoh Brown, but he showed off his athleticism. He was getting rid of the ball quickly. He wasn't taking any sacks at all. And he was delivering some passes that were pretty solid. So can't get too high on him, but you also can't get too low on him. It's preseason football and it's a rookie. What more can you say?
Absolutely, 100%, man. You couldn't put it any better than that. He did have a few good runs. Two rushes was tallied this game from Anthony Richardson. When it comes to his passing game, he was 7 for 12, 67 yards, one interception, QBR rating of 39.2. That doesn't matter. It's just a preseason. We know the difficulty it's going to take and how long it's going to take with Anthony Richardson. So that's not an issue at all. Moving forward, we mentioned the receivers. We're going to go ahead and talk about the receivers right now. The receivers had a pretty decent game. I would say most of them caught a few passes. I think the only drops came from Alec Pierce and McKenzie, from what I know, from what I've seen. But other than that, I think the receiver room did a pretty good job. Josh Downs had a really good first preseason game. We knew how good he was going to be potentially coming into the Colts. Also, especially from Reggie Wayne when he was available. I think he had a pretty solid game. And I'm going to mention my favorite guy moving forward, but we'll talk about him later if you don't mention him already. But I do think the receiving group did pretty decent. Michael Pittman Jr. He has got he. I think he dropped 2 passes too, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that other than that, I think the receiving room pretty much did what they had to do. Other than that, they kept the game close. It was a good game at the end of the day, but I think our defense definitely balled out. We'll get into that later. But the receiver room, I think, did pretty well. Let me get your thoughts on Josh Down and how you think the receiver room did.
I mean, the receiving room in general had a bit of an up and down day. There were some really great plays from them as well, especially later on. But there was also some struggles, especially with drops. Like you said, Isaiah McKenzie had that one missed route, and he also had a drop himself. Kylan Granson also had a drop as well, but that was uh, kind of an easier one. But Richardson did kind of put it more on the back shoulder than on the right shoulder, but it still hit him in the hand, so he should have caught it. But might not have been the easiest, though still easier amongst drops that we've seen. But anyways, there was him. Pittman, I don't know if we could have counted one of his throws as a drop because it was one of those higher ones by Richardson. And so because it hit his hand kind of like a high and it kind of just bounced off. So a little bit hard to quantify that as maybe a drop. But overall, they were getting some pretty solid separation. Isaiah McKenzie, for as much as we might drag on him a little bit for that missed route, he did have some really nice plays, especially after the catch on some of these shorter passes, which looked really, really fun. And Josh Downs, I'm not going to stop talking about him because Josh Downs is amazing. I loved what I saw from him. Very crisp, really good route runner. He was making some people miss as well. Like, I can't get enough of Josh Downs, especially in space, and I think he's going to be a very fun weapon for Richardson to throw to. But overall, there were some highs, some lows. Can't get too upset about anything though. So
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Josh Downs, it's just like it's amazing to see how open he can get with so little of time, and he's like sneaky fast too. I think that's the beauty of his game. Like he's short, can get under you really quick, and he can get open, and he can catch the football. Him and Richardson is going to be a nice duo moving forward, man. It really is. But we're gonna go ahead and slip. You guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section about the receiving room if you haven't already. We're gonna go ahead and get into one of my favorite guys I've mentioned since the off season, and I've seen him in training camp when I went down there. Jake Funk. Jake Funk, I think, like I mentioned, I think he's the fastest running back in the running back room. If you guys can take that with a grain of salt, you can debate me, argue with the wall. I don't care. I think me personally, what I see with my own eyes, and Luke can attest to it too. Jake Funk is probably the fastest running back. And he had himself a pretty decent day, and he could do both. He can run and receive. Area 51, I agree, 100%. Area 51, man. But he can run and receive, and it's one of those things that can be a beauty for Anthony Richardson. And another person we didn't mention is Mike Strachan. Mike Strachan is a grown man, another guy that seems to have a preseason Hall of Fame Hall of Fame off preseason like every debut. So he did a good one last year. He had a good jump ball catch this year as well. But back to Jake Funk, I think Jake Funk is going to be a very solid player. I hope he makes the roster. I'm pretty sure he will, just because he has my vote. But let me get your thoughts on Jake Funk and mentioning Mike Strachan.
all right, yeah. I do have to talk about Mike Strawn for a little bit since we were talking about wide receivers before. But yeah, Mega Strawn is the ultimate preseason wide receiver. Every single August, we have seen him so far, which it's only been two, but still, he just dominates in preseason. I don't know what these cornerbacks are thinking that they can stop him, but they can't. It's Calvin Johnson, but only in August. But yeah, he did a really great job, had a nice contested catch. Like really beautiful one, kind of jumping, but then kind of had to lowball it a little bit because the defender was over him. Still made the catch. Love him. Hopefully he makes more of those flashes in the preseason, and actually, hopefully he also makes them in the regular season if he gets a shot. We'll see. We'll see. But back to the running backs and Jake Funk in particular. It's a close race, I'm going to say, for like the fastest running back in this running back room. Previously, it was Naeem Hines was definitely the fastest. But now you got a little of a competition. I mean, there's Jonathan Taylor when healthy. Of course, everyone knows how fast he is. Uh, Deion Jackson has a bit of speed to him as well. Evan Hull has some nice speed as well. Like Zach Moss is probably the slowest, I think we can all say, of the running backs, but he's also the strongest. So you kind of get that balance of skill sets. Didn't really see a whole lot on Kenyon Drake at this point in terms of his speed, but yeah, I think we can say Funk is probably the fastest. Not gonna say, oh, definitively, but yeah. I liked what I saw from him. He got a good receiving profile and he ran pretty hard. Deion Jackson with the first team also had some really nice runs as well. Picked up some tough yardage, had some bounces to the outside that were nice when he was initially stuffed. Evan Hull, of course, the rookie that a lot of fans are going to be pointing to more than Jake Funk as their big hope for the future because he was drafted, unlike Funk. Uh, Hull, he had some nice runs here or there, but he also was stuffed a few times on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 back to back. But to be fair, the offensive line wasn't really doing him any favors in those short yardage situations. And he's not really a short yardage back. He's more of the scat back, the receiving back, change of pace, get him out in space. Running up the middle quite isn't his, forte. But he had some nice plays as well, especially in the receiving game. So running backs looked really solid, especially considering when Richardson was on the field and he was diverting defense's attention at times, especially with these RPO. There were some nice holes and like hesitation from the linebackers just because they couldn't fully commit to the running back because there's Richardson and we all know what he can do out in space. But we might see some bigger runs for these running backs and for Richardson later on in the preseason.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just the first game, so Colts Twitter still can overreact to everything, but it is what it is. Like you did mention Evan Hall. Evan Hall is a solid pick for the Colts, man. This draft class for the Colts is definitely nothing but spectacular in my eyes. I think it's very athletic, and then you can do a lot with what you got. So I do like the Evan Hall pick. I did like how he ran this game. We can go ahead into the quarterback position before we hop into the offensive line because the quarterback position is definitely going to go into the offensive line is going to go into this conversation. But uh, Gardner Minshew and Sam Ellinger both debuted as well today, and when you look at Gardner Minshew, he was perfect. I mean, he got sacked twice, but I think he had a pretty few good amount of good plays and good passes when you looked at him. Sam Ellinger just as well. Him going out there being mobile. I think both of those guys put up a good show. I do think we have a pretty decent quarterback room as of right now. I've seen a lot of people talking about Sam Ellinger on Twitter, but I do think both of those guys had a pretty decent outing. Let me know your thoughts about the quarterback room for today.
Yeah, Minshew, like you said, he was perfect 6 for 6 in terms of his passing, but he did take those 2 sacks. Uh, he had 72 passing yards, and then Ellinger was 8 of 9, so almost perfect. He took 1 sack, but he also had 72 yards, which is kind of weird. You don't really see two quarterbacks get the exact same passing yardage in a preseason game as much, but fun little fact right there. But both of them looked solid. Like neither of them were overwhelming as well. No touchdown passes for anyone on the quarterback room, but no interceptions outside of the one early one by Richardson. They both had some times that they struggled against pressure because, of course, they weren't quite as elusive as Anthony Richardson. Ellinger does have some ability, but sometimes these guys are going to get in the backfield and it's up to the quarterback to make them miss. Gardner Minshew probably isn't going to be the one making them miss of the three. He does have some elusiveness here, but not the same as the rest of them. They did a pretty solid job getting the ball to these backups and kind of carving up defenses when they had time. Just we'll see how they kind of look going forward, but can't really take too much of a veteran like Minshew or even Ellinger going up against the backups. But for backups, they did well against the backups.
Yeah, 100%, man. I do think the QBs, when it goes into the season, I think the biggest question, especially when it comes to Anthony Richardson, is that they can make the right plays. They just got to have the receivers to finish it. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to McKenzie and Alec Pierce, like both of those plays were definitely like made for to be completions and even touchdowns potentially, but they just fell short. And that was kind of an issue what we had last year as well when it's come from the wide receiver room was finishing the play. I mean, not all of the plays are going to be perfect, but if you got contact or even close to getting the football, I mean, you just got to bring it down. Like the Alec Pierce one was definitely for sure a touchdown. I mean, Alec Pierce is for sure a guy known for jump balls. Going to get the ball like 100% every time. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's the preseason. I'm pretty sure it won't happen every time, but it's just one of those scenarios when you see plays like that you can't really put it all on the QB. The wide receiver has to just come down with it. It's just that simple. So that's going to be
Yeah.
something we look forward to
I
watching
mean,
and
there's a
being
reason why they call
prepared.
it 50-50 balls, you know? You either
Absolutely.
make it or you don't at that point, and if you're a really bad receiver in those situations, then you're more so it's like a 25-75 ball, but at very least, with these guys, they make it more 50-50. Just you gotta come down with it when you can and try and limit the mistakes, but, is what it is, like you said.
Yeah, and we know Alex is good for it. I mean, we even seen it in training camp on
Mhm.
at the indoor arena when he threw the 60-yard bomb or 55-yard bomb to him off of 1 foot in the back of the end zone, right in the bucket, bread basket. So it's gonna happen. I mean, you can't catch everything. I wish we could, but if you're Josh Downs, I'm pretty sure that's pretty much a thing. Moving forward to the offensive line, the offensive line got up a few sacks for the QB department. And it was rough watching it. It's nothing we're not surprised from the offensive line department. I think the right side had more issues than the left side. But it's something that needs to be adjusted, of course. When you look at the offensive line, I think it's just going to be consistency moving forward. I think the depth is still probably going to be an issue for the Colts moving forward, but I do think they had a few hiccups today. I think they played it wasn't great, but I think they played pretty decent. If they didn't give up a few sacks, I think it would have probably put us in position to win the game, even if we're talking about special teams. But I don't think that needs to be a topic because special teams is just a conversation for itself. But let me get your thoughts about the offensive line and how they played today.
Well, important to note on the offensive line, even with the starters, we were missing one key one, Braden Smith. He was out this game. And so the right side was not looking as good as what we'd kind of hoped for, of course, especially early on with the starters. But they did shape up towards the end, and Richardson was given a lot more time to make some pretty solid plays, especially for that one long drive that he had that unfortunately ended up in a missed 29, 28-yard kick. But besides them, Fries had his struggles as well in the passing game, though he looked solid in the run. And the backups and the depth, yeah, there were some hits, but there were definitely some misses. Like Wesley French looked nice, but Emil Ekiyor was getting beat a few times, and that was not great to see for the young undrafted free agent on the roster bubble. There were a few plays where Blake Freeland wasn't looking too great, but there were also some plays where they gave their quarterbacks time and they were able to carve up the defenses. So, there was some hit or miss, but I would kind of, in an ideal world, like to see one more vet free agent added to the offensive line. But hey, not too stressed overall. Just, last thing we want to see though is the last year's offensive line performance in terms of sacks and pressures. So as long as we don't have that, we have an improvement.
100%, 100%. Like I said, it's gonna be something that'll probably it'll look a little different when we have our full starters out there for the offensive line because we know how those guys can go out there and play. But moving forward, the defense we got to talk about it. They had a few big plays this day, a few big plays today, and they had some hiccups as well. It's definitely when you talk about the linebacker department, but Darius Rush, man. Darius Rush went out there and got a pick six. Definitely was enjoy seeing that happen. We was excited on draft night when we got him. I don't know how he was available. But other than that, Grant Stewart had himself a day. He was out there finding the lanes and getting those tackles, man. So shout out to Grant Stewart. But the defense definitely looks like themselves, even if it's the preseason and all the stars aren't playing. It was good to see Shaq back out there. Juju was out there. Let me know your thoughts about the defense and how they performed, man. Hey man, we got a lot of turnovers today, man. It was good to see.
Yeah, the defense definitely stepped up well, especially towards the end. Uh, there were some really great highlights. I mean, I myself, as the conductor of the Darius Rush hype train, he was the only player in the entire pre-draft process that I mocked 2 times to the Colts. Everyone else was just one. I tried to be unique, but I just couldn't stop drafting Darius Rush. I loved him so much. He was just rising up my boards. I still can't believe he fell to the 5th round. I mean, what's the NFL thinking? Nothing on that point. But Darius Rush, he had that nice pick six. Was really hyped about that. My neighbors, not as much. Uh, but like you said, Grant Stewart also was just flying around. He had a nice force fumble, kind of right from behind a receiver, and just popped it right up in the air. Great hit by him, and he was just making plays all over. Darius Leonard, like you said, he's healthy. He was kind of on and off a few series. Like he wasn't on the very first series where the Colts gave the Bills the ball back at like the 15 or so. He wasn't there for the 2 or 3 plays there, but he was with the ones most of the time. And in general, it's just good to see him healthy. I mean, as long as he's healthy, we all know what his effect can be for the Colts defense. But beyond him, I mean, Darrell Baker Jr. also had some really nice plays in coverage when he was with the ones. He's been a really big riser through the training camp. Jalen Jones had some nice plays. Uh, Honestly, the young cornerbacks looked pretty solid in terms of like the top 5 young ones. But then once we got towards the back of it, we really started to see some carving up. And same goes with the linebackers as well. Grant Stewart had some Segun Olumbi. He he had some nice hits, but he also was getting a little lost in coverage at times, which was a bit of a concern. And for a back of the roster kind of guy, you kind of have to wonder, like, okay, if injuries hit, can we really trust this guy in coverage? So we'll see. But I do like Segun, and I think he could have a better, like, he's had some pretty nice plays in coverage in camp. So maybe this is just a rough day. It happens, but Stewart definitely made some nice plays. You had EJ Speed out there, of course, Zaire, of course. So the linebackers in general are pretty solid, but in coverage, once the depth hits, we start to have some questions. Uh, and then the defensive line. We got to talk a little bit about the defensive line. They had some really nice rushes. I mean, there were 3 sacks on the day, one of them by Dio Adengbo, who we love Hurricane Dio here. That's just a fact. Uh, Khalid Kareem also had a fumble. And of course, Al-Qadim Muhammad is back and he had a sack as well. So, I can't really complain too much. Al-Qadim Muhammad is getting sacks too now. I mean, sure, I'll take it. You know, but they were missing at times Buckner on the defensive line. So of course, like missing that big presence, you're not going to see as much consistency in the interior rushes. But ultimately, the defensive line looks solid. Like you can't really take too much from this game, but overall, the defense looked not bad. I mean, and the safeties even they didn't get burned deep a whole lot. It was more so in the intermediate game was where we kind of got beat in the passing game.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Hey, shout out to Al Qadim Muhammad, man. When I seen him at camp, I almost forgot that he was on the roster. But I was like, hey, man, AQM's here. So
Yeah,
it was
he's
it was good to
back.
see him. Yeah, he's back. It was good to see him out there. EJ Speed was definitely out there. So it was good to see Nick Cross out there too. So yeah, the defense for sure. I think they did all they can do. I think when it comes down to special teams, or Alec Pierce catching that touchdown, that's pretty much game at that point. And Matt Barkley, he just went back to his natural self. He just went into college form because Matt Barkley couldn't be stopped in the second half for some reason. So shout out to him. But it was good seeing him. It was good seeing Desmond Patman on the opposite side. He caught a touchdown. A lot of people thought it was like a revenge game because of the history with the Colts. But before we get that, you guys let us know all your thoughts in the comment section. Before we get up out of here, Lucas, if there's anyone that we didn't talk about that stood out, either team that you thought would had a pretty decent game.
Well, Basham, Boogie Basham had a really nice game for the Bills in terms of pass rush against us. Uh, Matt Gay had a missed short kick, which I briefly touched upon, which got a few people freaked out on Twitter at least. But the stat that I should tell you guys is in 2022, he didn't miss a single kick under 50 yards. All right. This is preseason. I am more likely leaning towards this being an aberration rather than, oh, he's washed now all of a sudden because he missed a under 30-yard kick in the preseason. Like, let's calm down. This is not Rigo. This is not, last season of Adam Vinatieri. Take a breather.
Yeah, take a breather, man. Shout out to Darrington Evans, man. He was playing a pretty good game too. He's running pretty hard out there
Mhm.
for the Buffalo Bills. But it was a good preseason game. Like I said, there's no hard feelings, you guys. This is just evaluation process. We know what season's going to look like. We're here to evaluate Anthony Richardson and see if he can go through his progressions and get better as the games go by. All he has to do is play football. That's all we're going to get out of him, and that's all we're going to need from him this season, is just to go out there and play, get comfortable, and start to understand the game a little bit more. We know how talented he can be. He's shown it. He could put the ball out there for him. All the receivers got to do is catch it. That's all they got to do. And then we got our offense back. We had one of the worst. We had the worst offense last year. Now we got us a franchise quarterback that can do both. He's mobile. He can throw the football. All it takes is time. So Colts fans, just be patient. Before we get out of here, let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Follow us on both platforms. Follow the Blue Stable. Check out the articles. The link is down here on the headline here header. Before we get out of here, is there anything else you want to say before we leave?
Well, just keep on checking out Colts Twitter, of course. Keep on checking out Culture Shock because this is an amazing channel right over here. And ultimately, just keep calm and carry on, Colts fans. It's preseason. We're going to have a great time just evaluating, like you said. And ultimately, Colts football's back. Let's just take a moment and celebrate that fact. All right. We're back. The long off season is basically over. We can finally watch Colts football again.
Yes, sir. We can finally watch it. But we appreciate you guys. More content on the way. Stay tuned. This is Marcus. This is Jay, and we are out.